Um, so we're gonna do my worm section. It's kind of hard to follow up Tyler because Tyler's worm sections are fucking great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
He's so good. I'm mostly in here to vent out some emotions right now.
We're not gonna sugarcoat it. Our girl Taylor, she's in trouble. Okay.
We're on arc 22. I don't know if we mentioned. I feel broken. I'm extremely interested to get the feedback this year. Actually, speaking of which, let me pull. We've gotten a lot of recent comments, and I would like to shout
Oh
some of
yeah.
y'all out.
Okay, before this podcast, I was looking for a comment and I couldn't find like the Reddit post or the YouTube video it was on, but I wanted to talk about it because like I've gone through the story completely twice, and there's a lot of arcs that I've like read slash
Hey
listened
everybody,
to
welcome to
several
the
times. There's a connection I never made before that
here. It
one,
was
like,
Mr. It was our good friend Todd Bell on the video proper for episode 24.
yeah, he like casually threw this out as if like, oh, obviously you know this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Where so we kind of find we kind of get a look into Cauldron's operations at the end of Arc 21 with Numberman, and he kind of talks about some of these capes who are kind of integral to their operations, and he's like, yeah, I guess now we can talk about like another crucial member that they lost back in Arc 17, because he's like, we know that we know now that the Simmer, all these monsters she dumped out came from Cauldron. And I was like, wait, where's he going with this? And he's like, you know how like a lot of these case 53s like Gregor the Snail just like kind of woke up in an alleyway one day and don't know where they came from or why they are the way they are. He's like, that's the guy we see in Arc 17, the one who's like, give me your memories. And I was like, I'd never made that connection, but it actually makes a lot of sense to me.
And that guy was so creepy too. He really made a big impression on me. So really, really good catch there. And like, I'm really glad y'all brought that up. Which is why I'm very excited to see what feedback y'all can add to this arc, because your boy Willer is stressed and upset. Um, I I kind of hate Taylor, man. I don't want to be in her head anymore. It's exhausting.
I if it like I think that sentiment can be echoed. If I want to say what the sentiment was, because I recently re-listened to the We've Got Worm discussion of this arc.
I was so
And
tempted. Like I would never listen to them before we talk because I want to come in pure. But today I was like, oh, I just want to know.
to give a quick impression, I both of them, I both Scott and Matt, or at least I think Scott said this is probably the least sympathetic that Taylor is in the entirety of the story.
I And it's crazy, right? Because hold on, I do want to do one more comment. Shout out to just Harbinger.
Yeah.
Hello. He left a really nice comment about how he doesn't always comment, but he's really glad that we continue the series. He says that thanks for sharing your discussions with us, because he says you guys would probably do this anyways, like without recording it. That's absolutely right. That's a big part of why this podcast
Yeah,
exists.
we all pretty much have our Discord open like 24 hours a day, typing away about stuff we're reading, but like this comment was really encouraging and just like a really sweet thing to type to us.
So after that sweetness, yeah. So we were talking about Scott and Matt, and I was saying, so Scott is like in particularly always like very judgmental on Taylor, which is why the Y butt I think is the acronym they go with became a thing. But he's also like he's spitting facts, but like I feel like if even they're like defeated by this, like more the opposite. I'm a little more lenient because at the end of the day, it's just like that's her character. But at this point, I'm just exhausted, man. I can't. I like if they were also stressed out by this, I'm glad that I'm not alone. Is basically what I'm trying to get at.
I think this is like, even though Taylor, like I'll always be the number one proponent that I love this story and I do love Taylor's character. That's just me, dog. But I will say, despite the fact that Taylor has like done probably like objectively much worse things than she does in this arc, this is the arc in the story where I'm just like I'm like she's the bad guy. This is the arc where I'm like this is everyone working against her. And we talked last week about how even Tattletale calls Taylor out that like Taylor, your idea of compromise is that everyone does what you want.
Yeah,
And
it's
I like that the story is kind
reinforces
of on
it.
the same page as us.
Yeah. Well, about that, we'll get to that. Um, so I've spoken about Amy before. I don't know if I said this on the podcast. I don't really like Amy, but I think there's a lot of good writing around her. But also, like, just as a person and character, I just don't really like her. Um, it's not quite a Skylar White scenario because I don't know, I just don't like her because I think her personality just comes off as a defeatist and whiny kind of person. But on the bright side, like, we're not always in her head. So even though whenever people are interacting with her, I can be like, oh, Amy's kind of really hard to deal with sometimes. Um, there's always this undercurrent of like, well, at least I'm not seeing her rationalize this all the time in her head. Seeing Taylor rationalize in this arc and just be so unwilling to bend and then do the horrible things she does at the end of it just really took the wind out of my like Taylor sails. And I'm just terrified of how much worse this can get. Um but
Yeah,
on to some points I'd like to hit for this arc.
yeah,
If you have anything else to say before we start.
not really. We it's important to note we've been podcasting for what like not quite 4 hours at this point.
I have.
You have.
Because me and Joe did our entire freaking you part.
There's just so many good things in the world that we have to tell people about.
It's true. I want you all to enjoy all these things, and
Like,
we take a lot of care to try to share these things as much as we can. Um, I'll go chronologically here because the big part is at the end, and I
yeah,
think we should end with
like
it.
I have one for like 22.1,
Yeah.
one for 22.2, so we can
It's
go kind of chronological.
it's interesting seeing Dinah in 21.1, and Taylor is also like, I've never really seen what Dinah is actually like. She's kind of an asshole.
Yeah, she realizes that she did everything for this girl that she doesn't really know, and I think at one point we considered the possibility where Taylor saving Dinah is more for Taylor's peace of mind than it is for Dinah.
Yeah.
I don't know, this moment kind of got me back in that state of mind where it's like Taylor doesn't know this girl.
And as it turns out, she's very sassy, and now she has a right to be. She doesn't want to be used by anyone else ever again.
Yeah, she's probably done with that shit.
But she's so sassy. Um, just wanted to comment on that. I think 22.2 has a really important story beat. Um, Tag says that he would rather kill Taylor than send her to the birdcage. Um, I think this is an interesting note. We've seen a lot of characters in the birdcage now. We've been there like maybe 3 chapters. Maybe I'm missing some stuff aside from like Lung murdering Bakuda, but it doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah, I wonder how much the outside world even knows what the inside of the birdcage is like.
Yeah.
Obviously Dragon can monitor it, but I wonder if they don't even know what it's like on the inside as far as they're like tag might be like, "Oh, it's probably just a bunch of Slaughterhouse 9 type people thunderdoming in there."
Alternatively, as director of the PRT, maybe he does know, and that we just haven't seen those corners because Amy and Marquise, like, Amy's always protected by Marquise, and Marquise is already a high up in the prison, and no one's gonna fuck with Long.
Yeah.
So we keep seeing these perspectives where they actually have respect. We don't know what it's like. Have we seen Canary recently? I can't remember. Like, what is she up to?
I think she was mentioned, I think, in one of the last Birdcage chapters where I think she was just like giving entertainment to her cell block.
Even that, like, she's not. I don't know. Even that doesn't seem particularly bad. But either way, the point here that I wanted to make is that in Tag's mind, he sees the birdcage as this terrible place, And keeping that in mind, this whole time he is trying his best to avoid sending Taylor there. I feel like this is him extending an olive branch in his own way and showing mercy to Taylor. That's
Yeah.
how I read this.
Because like initially going into this arc, Taylor's obviously a very confrontational, unflinching person, and so is tagged. I see keep saying tagged. So is tag. And we there's one or two times that we kind of see a little bit past this just like unflinching asshole of his, where he does kind of like almost everything he does is to undermine Taylor, but in this moment, the obvious move would be like the obvious move if he truly hated her guts would be like, oh, I'm gonna do whatever I think is worse for you. He's like, no, like I'm trying to do you a mercy. I don't want to send you there because I think it's worse.
And he's willing to hear what she has to say, right? And whether or not he was ever gonna flinch on anything, personally, I believe there are things that he could have caved on. It's just that Taylor's asking for so much
Yeah,
whenever she makes her demands. It's insane.
and like I think the last like the one other like tag quote in this arc that I really want to talk about, and this is something like a lot of fans have kind of debated about, is when they mention that Flechette defected to the Undersiders. He has a moment where he's like, "That's really unfortunate to hear," but he's like, you know, she's been in this city during the Slaughterhouse Nine and Echidna. He's like, I don't know what she's going through. I hope that she'll, come to her senses. And that's a lot more thoughtful than we usually see him be. And so people have taken two pretty opposite stances here,
Interesting.
where one stance is that he's being genuine. He really does care about Flechette this much, and he really is understanding that he doesn't know everything about her. But then some other people are like, oh, well, he's just pretending to be thoughtful so the wards will like him better and be on his side in this argument. And
Mm,
I'm on the camp that I really do think that he's like, no, like I don't know what's going on with Flechette.
Here's why I think he's genuine. He has no problem showing his angrier side when, say, Miss Militia or Clockblocker or any some of the other wards are around. He's not making any pretend like he's not pretending. When we first met Tag, he seemed like a very militant, hard ass kind of man. Um, to where you get that quote where Taylor is like, it's she pretty much mentions everything as a game, going back to cops and robbers, right? And he's like, a game? This is a fucking war. And you guys can try to get your victories, but we're gonna lick our wounds or we're gonna get back up. He's very determined, but he sees this as a real threat. Um, so all this to say, he's willing to show his subordinates his rougher side. So I don't see why he would have a motive to really lie here,
Yeah,
especially if he's trying to intimidate Taylor. Why would he show him Why would she show her a compassionate side if it's fake? Like,
yeah.
I
And
don't
because
know.
like whenever I first read this, a side of me was like, maybe he is putting on a show because like both Taylor and Flechette have things going on that he doesn't know. They have a story that he doesn't have the full thing. So it's like, oh, well, he must be putting on a show because he's extending that to Flechette, but not Taylor.
There's a
But
big difference.
then I also realized that, you know, I think he actually does realize that there's more to Taylor than he knows. Because, like, he doesn't ever say, like, that maybe she doesn't have her reasons. The reason he's so confrontational with her, which he reiterates in one of these chapters, is that, like, the reason I'm so confrontational here is because you're asking us to give government sanctioned control of the city to these supervillains.
Yeah, it's this is apples and oranges, or like apples and corn cobs. Like they're so different, to where like Taylor has murdered a man. She has the PRT head, by the way. Without, like, they still don't really have evidence of what Coyle did, as far as I know. So there's still that stigma around her. She has held people hostage. She has used Region to kidnap people. Like, Taylor, you're not Flechette. Flechette deserves that olive branch. You have done so many horrible things, and now you're asking for these insane asks. I think Taylor just sucks. That's the difference between Flechette and Taylor. She is very hard to deal with, and she is a menace to someone like Tag.
Yeah, and I think the point where if I like a lot of people who kind of read through Worm really fast on their first read through are usually a lot more on Team Taylor than someone who, kind of takes their time and stuff like that. And I think my first read through I was more on Team Taylor, but I think the point where I flipped was kind of a point where Miss Militia starts talking and
Oh yeah, so good.
everyone else kind of echoes her that Taylor's like, what I really want is for you guys to reform the PRT. And she's like, you know what? I 100% agree with you. We will do it. She's like, I agree. The PRT needs changes. We will do it, but we can't do the letting villains have control of the city. So she is doing the compromise that Taylor's always wanted. She's like, you know what? We're going to give you one half of this deal if you'll concede the other half. And Taylor doesn't take it. And that's the point where Speed Reader Bradley flopped over from Team Taylor to Team PRT.
Yeah, it's just so I've been kind of on this train ever since like the way she kind of treated Dragon and Defiant kind of like got me started back on this track. And it's really erupting here. Let's move on from 22.2. Just before I do, though, I want to say how cool the lawyer is. It's just not much to say about it. He's just objectively super fun.
I love the part of the chapter where it's like he lists all of these crimes, like, oh, a
Yes.
couple dozen, like, instances of assault, some manslaughter, some murder, like all of these crimes. And he's like, I'm going to level with you. It worse. And she's like, I don't know if that should make me feel better or worse.
part of what makes that part so good is that Taylor can't quite remember some of them.
Yeah, she's like, oh, when was that?
Was that
13.
this one or this one? Big oofs. Um. So Danny gets brought into the interrogation. I like when he's gonna go for a slap, but he hugs her. Just a really nice. I like the prose in that part.
Yeah, there's a lot of indecision on his part. There's that, and then like a really just like I don't even know if sad is the right word, but they ask like, did you know this about your daughter? Did you know she was this person? And he says
Yes.
yes, and then a second later he says a no, and it's kind of like obviously we can't be in Danny's head. Maybe he expected something was up, or maybe he's just like, I don't know, maybe he's trying to take responsibility for his daughter. We can't know what's in his head, but
I think it's clear that he did know she was exactly Skitter. Um, but just with how distant she was, I think he knew something was up.
yeah, he had to know something was
Tonight.
going
Um, it's I think the one time I was with Taylor this entire arc was when she's kind of defending the honor of the Undersiders. Um, like whatever she says about them, they're still villains, so it's not gonna give them like too much leniency. But she at least defends their like their pathos, I suppose. Where I don't know, she does a good job at um bringing down and like refining the good qualities and like the actual reasonable excuses to why they're all the way they are. And I just thought it was kind of heartwarming. We even get like this story beat where Regent allegedly potentially loves Imp now, or like he likes her in some
on.
capacity, which we've always gotten that feeling with how much they hang out together. But now Taylor confirms like, yeah, there's probably something there. I really like how she defends Bitch in particular, because she understands her so well, and the no one else in the world would, you know.
Yeah. And I really like because I don't think it's that particular conversation, but elsewhere in the chapter or maybe the arc, um, I think Miss Militia, I mean, I always love her.
She's fantastic.
She is able to actually kind of recognize this about Taylor and the Undersiders. She's like, you guys are still criminals, but she's like, I do recognize and respect the fact that we all know that you guys have risked your life when you didn't have to against
Mm-hmm.
various S-class threats.
Yeah. Um. So one of my favorite parts of Miss Militia, bringing her up, it's a good segue to when she's like, Taylor, I am really disappointed with you,
And it's just
and
like,
it's like
yeah,
you made this so difficult that now we have to bring in Alexandria, and she's going to make this a nightmare. And like why it's kind of what I would do to Taylor. Like it's verbally, she's grabbing her shoulders and shaking her and yelling, "Why are you like this?"
yeah,
You
I feel like we are Miss Militia in this arc.
absolutely.
Just like, yes, we agree with this part of what you want to do, not this part. It's like, make a concession. She's like yelling at her. She's shaking her like, we're disappointed in you. Go to your room.
We are very much her. So Alexandria runs this scheme of fake taking out the Undersiders. Which while she was going through it, it's like, yeah, I'll release them if you make your concessions or whatever. Which I was like, why would she release them? Turns out she was never grabbing them
Ooh.
at all. It's just always interesting to see Alexandria, because I think deliberately she reminds me so much of Taylor. Um,
I think
Maybe
even
that's a common vibe.
Taylor said that she reminds her of herself.
Yeah, it's not only like it seems like they have similar features, but also just like their way of kind of washing away the guilt or like rationalizing their actions
Yeah,
is
because
very similar.
it's like, what we know of what Alexandria has done in this like Cauldron organization, we know she's done a lot of really bad things that I'm sure she thinks she has really good reasons for, which is like someone else we know.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can jump to the chase at this point,
Yeah, let's cut to the
to the
chase.
climax. Taylor thinks someone is dead. By the body size, she thinks it's Greer bitch because the guards rolling the body chuckle for a little bit, and she just loses it without confirming anything. And what does she do in this moment of unconfirmed rage? She murders two people that are super high in the PRT. One is the director, and wasn't so Costa Brown or Alexandra was the director before, then Tag became the director, right? But she was still involved in some way. I forgot how it went. She was still pretty high up in the organization. That's all that matters. And she just snaps and kills them. And when she wakes up, she doesn't even feel bad about it. And this is where she loses me, man. Um, and kind of where the story loses me, because you were saying you think the story agrees with me, but I feel like, and this baffled me so much, and this is what I really need help understanding. You're good at saving these moments for me.
All right.
Um, it's like, so when she snaps on an unconfirmed death of a friend, she murders two people. And I feel like that's glossed away. She's rewarded. The world rewards her murdering two people for once. Where very quickly the rest of the PRT is like, well, you know what? Our best bet right now is to have you join us. And then they hold the press conference with Chevalier and they have her join them, which is the best case scenario. She's insane. She should be in the deepest depths of the birdcage right now. And she gets this sweet deal. No one's really that angry with her. It was just baffling to me.
Yeah, so I actually did a lot of looking at this because it's been a while since I had read this chapter, so I had to re-go through it. And it occurred to me on a reread, like, and especially from like kind of the latter half of the Echidna arc, how much people kind of hate Alexandria now. And don't get me wrong, that does not justify Taylor killing Alexandria and Tag. I think she is exclusively in the wrong for doing that. These people were not, they were playing her. Um, But on some levels, I can kind of get some of the heroes' reactions to this throughout the arc. They're kind of stressing how much they don't like Alexandria being around. Like Alexandria was dishonorably discharged. Like she's only still with the PRT to train
Right, yeah.
her. And then even like Defiant and Miss Militia say these things where it's like, I hate you because you made us call her. And even Defiant, like more than one person raises the issue that Alexandria's method of interrogating Taylor is kind of like fucked up and inhumane. Even Defiant is like, this is insane. Um, and so they're like, here's the thing. After Taylor wakes up, they're like, in a situation where you genuinely believed that this person was killing your friends without like due process of law, we can understand why you would retaliate. It still doesn't make it legal, but I think they're kind of on her page. And in looking at other people's kind of analysis of this, because I was like, they really should be more mad with her killing Alexandria, right? One person's specific analogy was like, if it came out that Barack Obama was actually the kingpin of like the Americas of like the United States health insurance industry, and he was also associated with like assassins who would take out anyone who tried to expose that, he would probably lose a lot of he'd probably lose a lot of public sympathy. And then if we want to extend off of this more,
And someone assassinates him, right? That person is still, it's, oh my god, I don't think that person would just get the everything turned out for the, it couldn't have gone better for Taylor after she turned herself in. And I feel like it only happened because she killed Alexandria. It's like she aside from that, she was gonna lose. No concessions were gonna be made. She was gonna go in a jail, like probably a medium power jail somewhere, maybe not the birdcage, I don't know. If there is anywhere else she could go. The point is that it turned out the best possible because she murdered Alexandria. So, like, yes, that analogy kind of works, but like the world just everything turned out so good from these murders, and it's like your reaction is not to attack them; it is to full out murder them. It's crazy to me.
one
And
moment I kind of liked that I'd forgotten about is whenever she makes this decision to attack them, she has a she has actually a very rare moment of like self-awareness where when she starts attacking them, she starts trying to do what she always does, where she starts trying to rationalize it, where she's like, they're the bullies. She's like, I'm not, I don't want the bullies to win again. I have to do this for the future of the PRT. And then she has all these thoughts, and then she says, but the thoughts sounded disconnected, false. And then
yeah,
he finally has one of those rare moments of self-reflection where she doesn't try to rationalize it as being for the better. She's like, no, this was revenge. It was
yeah.
simpler than all that. She says it was revenge.
And it's like she even goes, if I pass out right now, they're gonna instinctively kill them. That's okay. Like she's okay with that fact.
Yeah, and
Okay, so
as terrible as what she's doing is, I don't know if I should be glad or sad that she's self-aware she's killing these people out of spite.
it's Alexandria side because I knew that would be the first like, oh, people don't really like Alexandria right now. Her killing Tagged is the worst thing she's ever done by far.
I think her killing Tag is a lot worse than killing Alexandria.
And this is the one that in no circumstance should be excused. I even mentioned earlier how Tagged offered her an olive branch and how he has to play tough ball because she's batshit insane. It's like, oh, he's bullying me and being nice to Flechette. It's not the same case, Taylor. So when she kills Tagged and everyone wakes up and they're like, well, I guess we gotta, if we can take this opportunity, we can make Taylor one of our own, and the Undersiders won't attack us or anything, so let's do it. She should be in the birdcage, and I mean, there's no point of beating this because the story is what it is, and I can understand like what Wildbow had in mind. I just don't think it lands with me, and I don't know if there's a rationale that can make this particular beat land. It's not like when Taylor Says Emma's not in my mind, but I'm gonna say all these bad things I did to spook her, kind of scenario, you know, because that can I was able to be talked into liking that one when re-explained, but this one just feels so disconnected to me. And
Yeah.
I'm partway through 23, and I'm just like, it's only a matter of time before she betrays these people after they're offering so much for her, after they overlooked two, like, horrible murders. This person is a person that when she's angry, she will kill you with bugs. And that is the kind of character that she set. So, how anyone can trust this girl is beyond me. I'm very disappointed because I could see, like, 3 or 4 arcs from now, she's gonna betray all of her new teammates.
Maybe
All right,
really.
I'm a deflated balloon now. I got it all out of my chest.
There you go.
What, you got anything else with these particular story beats?
Um, with this particular one, mostly I just want to see. I, 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 I think it would be fair to say this could be a controversial arc. So I encourage people to talk about this in the comments.
Please, no, yeah. Even though like I'm dying to see like justifications, or I feel like I might be in the minority here with how much this is driving me up the walls. But I want to hear anything y'all got to say about this one. Good
Um,
discussion arc.
yeah, I think that's probably the meat of the main part of this arc. We do have the interludes.
22.A. It's mostly Charlotte and the Undersiders now. It's pretty cute seeing her interact with them and how they are now after the events and all that. But I think the main thing with this arc is the finale for me. Okay, I have some theories. This is
Ooh,
exciting.
this pins and string connected on the wall Willer power hour.
Pepe Sylvia. Um, so this little kid had a dream of like a weird ethereal space fish. Um, on the night that Taylor was outed. Interestingly enough, we have zero like idea what went on through Taylor's head that night.
Yeah, because
We jump from there to like a couple nights after when she's dealing with a Chords gang, I believe.
yeah.
And it was from a Chords point of view, so we weren't even in her head that time. There's this odds like weirdly enough, this is one of the juiciest points where we could be in Taylor's mind, and we skip through it, right? I want to say that she had her third trigger event that night. And it dawned on me after listening to We Got Worm. I believe Scott had the theory that because Echidna was smelling people and she was like, Eidolon smells good, Gru smells good, and Taylor, I forgot who else he might have mentioned. Notably, it's weird that she pointed out Gru. We know Gru has had 2 trigger events. So I'm going to go ahead and say, and we also learned, I think, from the Theo interlude we had recently that sometimes people go through multiple trigger events at once. It's that intense for them. I want to say in that locker, Taylor went through 2 trigger events. It would explain why she's such a good master, and maybe even explain that she has a power that she hasn't even fully understood yet. And I want to say that's even more leveled up now on account of that third trigger event. I could see her mentality being like, now that my identity is out, even though I'm not literally trapped, I feel the most trapped ever. I feel like that would be in line with the way that Taylor triggers.
Ooh, everyone is fanning their faces at your prediction. It's getting hot in here.
Getting hot in here. As for what the power is, I don't know, man. I'm still down for the theory that she can control people. I thought it would be through the passengers, but they're so like fourth dimensional that they're not really bugs anymore. But you know, powers are so abstract, or as they get stronger, to where like, why not control? If you view people as bugs, maybe you can control them as bugs, or
Ooh.
something like that. Maybe I know specifically the last arc is called Spec, which is a really badass name.
Ooh.
So if this was to be the case, I could see at this point of the story Taylor viewing all humans as just specks in the grander scheme of thing, and maybe she can control them. That'd
She
be
says
neat.
you're all just ants to me. And then she's like, wait a minute.
Um, so as for 22.b, a little more to talk about. This
God,
is a Bradley ass interlude right
I
here.
love Long so much.
So this is the long interlude. I was very confused early on. I was like, who are all these people and why should I care? And then the first time jump happens and it's like I think it opens up with like calling him Long immediately.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I care now." um it's kind of how Long took over, how he went to prisons, how he fought Leviathan, and his current state now in the birdcage. Notably, this has the excuse for the name of the Asian bad boys. I
Ooh.
think this is a retroactive excuse. I'm not gonna give Wildbow this.
Akira's like, that's a dumb name, Long.
And yeah, this feels not self indulgent, self aware. Um, and I feel like that's not what he had planned all along. I know he plans a lot of things ahead, but I think he realized AVB is a silly name. Um, I think his fight with Leviathan is just kind of awe inspiring. Like it's so well written, and it's like at the beginning of the fight, he's just watching it happen. Right, he's kind of like getting himself pepped up because that's how his power works. But by the end of it, as he's getting angrier, he's really doing it. He's like, that's the best we've ever seen anyone do against Leviathan. I think that's like Scion level fighting
Oh
against
yeah,
Leviathan.
like I think like he just kept growing bigger, and I think the only reason he stopped is because like he was beating the shit out of Leviathan, but realized he wouldn't actually be able to finish Leviathan off. So his power's like, well, if this is impossible, there's no
No
challenge.
adrenaline, yeah. Um, Very interesting. But yeah, like even when Scion fought Leviathan, he warded him off. But I feel like Leviathan just kind of walked away at that point. Like he was chased away. I feel like Long did that by himself as Long. So
Yeah, I think he said like there were even moments when Leviathan was trying to get away, and he would like grab him and beat him up more.
shit's badass. They were fighting like in like a deep part of the ocean at one point, weren't they?
Yeah,
Or
and you
like
kind
in
of
a
like
deep
feel.
part of what I think the Earth cracked and they were like fighting within that crack or something.
Yeah, he said like the ocean was like steaming around him,
Very cool.
and you kind of have to feel for Long because at the end of this, right before the time skip, he's like, for a few moments, I was the most powerful like being on Earth, but
Yeah.
no one was really around to see it.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because like I haven't really thought about like what is Lung's desire, but I feel like he has this kind of honorable like I want to be noticed as a strong person desire.
Yeah, it's
Um
like the very first thing when he got into prison is he wanted people to like know how powerful he is. He wanted them to fear him. I think that's something he desires.
mhm.
And on that note, I actually want to talk about Long's trigger event. This is
Right.
something I
Yeah, I would like some more.
this is something I don't think is talked about enough. And when it is talked about, I have different thoughts than other people do. So what happens is Lung, who is like a young, like proto Yakuza member. I think he's like still kind of a junior member of this Yakuza. He is basically going to crash this meeting, and he walks in on the meeting, and we see a black woman in a lab coat and a woman in a suit who I believe we're supposed to piece together. This is the doctor from Cauldron and her bodyguard,
I
who
believe Contessa.
Contessa. And so, kind of throughout the beginning of this chapter, when he's talking to, I guess, his mentor, senpai guy, Daichi, he uses a lot of language that kind of shows how much he looks up to Daichi.
Mhm.
He talks about how like Daichi will do this because he's the strongest. He kind of talks about like Daichi's frame and how strong he is. Um,
Hmm.
and whenever the fighting starts against Contessa, he sees how she's just like effortlessly tearing apart these Yakuza members who are people he looks up to a lot. And even when Daichi starts using his powers where he sends his punch ghosts at her,
Yeah.
like he's kind of like flabbergasted that she's able to stop his spirits. He's
At,
like,
at one point, he's also like, "Why did Daichi even start attacking? Like, it just turned out that bad."
yeah. And at the end of the fight, whenever everyone's on the ground, like she's not even dirty, and he begins choking on some cocaine, and he triggers during that.
Hmm.
And I think too many people focus on the cocaine.
Really, I thought
Not
it would be
enough.
clearly about the Contessa thing.
Yeah, I think most people don't focus enough about literally everything else that came before that. Everyone's like, how do you get lungs power from cocaine? And I was like, it wasn't that. I think what we have here is Lung saw these people he looked up to that he saw as strong. Like even when people are like, "Oh, we shouldn't do this fight," they're like, "No, no, 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 no. We have muscle."
Yeah,
These people that he looks up to that he views as strong were just effortlessly taken down by this opponent that he now views as just insurmountable. There was no chance they were ever going to win. And I think now Lung has a power where as long as he has an opponent stronger than him, he will keep rising to that challenge.
yeah.
He is going to want to keep fighting until there is no insurmountable opponent for him. And I also like it as a power because this isn't a power like Parian's where it could also have some like outside utility for sewing. This is it's only used when he feels like he's in danger when he's fighting. And I think because of what happened to him here, he kind of has something to prove. He takes someone stronger than him. He takes that insurmountable opponent as a huge challenge. And I don't know. His first big obstacle was Contessa here, and we see kind of how excited he was to fight Leviathan too. But I don't know. That's what I think about Lung's trigger event. I don't see a lot of people talk about it, so hey,
I
throw
think
your
that's
I
how
think
I interpreted it. To be fair, I was also very confused on who anyone was at first.
yeah.
So that took away from my full analysis mode from here. But very, yeah, I that's a really cool way to look at it, and I feel like that very much fits the themes of powers and relating to their trigger events. There's two more points I wanted to touch on.
Yes.
One is how Lung says that Skitter was stronger when she was a warrior when he sees her coming out as Weaver, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like the story is really leaning in this direction where a constrained Taylor is going to be less effective and strong as the unhinged Taylor. And it definitely, like, I feel like the text is kind of siding with Lung here as I'm getting into 23, where the bureaucracy is really nerfing her effectiveness. And I just think it's an interesting beat. It very much fits how Lung views the world, but also it's kind of disappointing that it kind of reaffirms that things might only get darker from here. I don't know what Taylor could do to redeem herself to me. Maybe I'm being too paranoid on her stay with her new teammates, but I guess we'll see.
I guess we'll see.
There's some stuff about like the teacher trying to maximize Lung's powers, yada yada, for me. The big one,
Lung's like, fuck that.
the big one is how Lung chooses not to tell Marquis, that the teacher's kind of like building a force to go against him, right? Um, I just thought this was so interesting because I never saw Lung as one to get used. Like, he's always been a brute force, show display of strength, and that's how you gain followers kind of guy, and that's how you play the game, right? But here he's playing the game more tactically, withholding information, and I don't know why, but it just really hit me that he was doing this. Maybe we've seen this side of him before, but it just seems like a really big step to him considering other avenues of strength potentially. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if this is like teacher actually did get some kind of foothold uh in Lung's mind as far as manipulation goes.
Right, yeah, teacher's power was exactly what again?
I believe he can grant people like thinker powers and tinker powers in
Hmm.
exchange for he has like some amount of influence over them.
Hmm. Did we ever get a statement on like how he activates the power? Like I would
Not
have to
sure.
wonder. I hmm, I prefer to think that Lung is expanding his worldview a little bit, but I guess
I
we'll
like
see.
that better too. I think Long is changing in ways. He saw one of his probably most influential opponents change in a way, and I think he's also changing in a way.
Yeah,
Maybe not the same way, but in some way.
man, Taylor versus Long, name a more weird rivalry. I think that's it for Worm. I feel like I recorded for 5 hours today. I might have
Y'all,
legitimately.
we need food and sleeps.
Goodbye, everybody. I hope y'all have a lovely night or morning whenever you're listening to this.
Keep the change.